Welcome to the ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast. I'm Kate Moore-Youssef, and I'm a wellbeing and lifestyle coach, EFT practitioner, mum to 4 kids, and passionate about helping more women to understand and accept their amazing ADHD brains. After speaking to many women just like me, and probably you, I know there is a need for more health and lifestyle support for women newly diagnosed with ADHD. In these conversations, you'll learn from insightful guests, hear new findings, and discover powerful perspectives and lifestyle tools to enable you to live your most fulfilled, calm, and purposeful life wherever you are on your ADHD journey. Here's today's episode. Today we have a fantastic guest, actually from Sweden. I think you're our first Swedish guest. So we've got Dr. Lotta Borg Skoglund here, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Skoglund here because she is an associate professor in psychiatry at the Department of Women's and Children's Health at Uppsala University. She's also an affiliated researcher at the Department of Clinical Neuroscience at Karolinska Institute. And her scientific work and the research targets the intersection of ADHD and comorbidity conditions such as substance use disorders, personality disorders, and mood disorders, as well as the very well-known gender discrepancies and hormonal factors associated with neurodiversity and ADHD, something that we're going to be talking about today. And Lotta's current research involves adverse psychiatric and reproductive outcomes among child, adolescent, and adult psychiatry, gynecology, and social sciences, focusing on females with ADHD across the lifespan. This is fascinating for the podcast, and more specifically, her research explores how sex hormones, hormonal contraceptives, and sexual risk-taking in girls and women interact with specific ADHD traits, symptom severity, and comorbid conditions. I wanted to make sure we got all of that bio here because there's so much in that already and what you're researching. And just off camera, before we were saying that, things are beginning to move. We're starting to see traction. And all this that I just mentioned in your amazing bio is something that we see anecdotally. I'm seeing it in my practice. You must have seen it clinically, for many, many years. And finally, it's at the forefront of conversations. Not enough, but it's there. And just before we get talking, you have also just written a fantastic new book that has been written in lots of different languages. You can buy it everywhere. It's called ADHD Girls to Women Getting on the Radar. Let's talk, and we'll carry on talking about all the other things that you're involved in, such as Letter Life as well. So Lotta, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm a huge fan, of course, of your podcast. I've told you that before, so it's an honor and it's a pleasure, and I really look forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about here. Maybe we can just begin with the fact that you've been diagnosed with ADHD, and you not only are you a psychiatrist, you're a researcher, you're an author, you're also a mother. You understand ADHD from so many different angles. And I was doing some research on you, and you come from a family of psychiatrists. And what's interesting is that even though you were from a family of psychiatrists, still the ADHD in women wasn't really on the radar. I mean, how old were you when you were diagnosed? And I guess, how old were you when you began understanding how to manage your own ADHD?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I was kind of caught off guard talking about this in a previous podcast last week, and not off guard because I didn't want to talk about it, because I was diagnosed for ages ago, so I'm not that interested in my own ADHD anymore, basically. So I was trying to think. I thought it was in late adolescence, but when I realized I was diagnosed after having my 5 kids. So that must have been around my early 30s. I am not entirely sure. And again, because this is, even though there's a before and after you get your diagnosis, I have since then been so invested in trying to understand more about it and to try to make sure that not so many girls and women have to struggle the way I had to do before I got this understanding and this diagnosis. So I would say around 30, 32 or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the fact that you've done so much career-wise alongside having 5 kids, I mean, that's the most ADHD thing ever, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
This
Right.
overproductivity, just wanting to keep going, this sort of internal drive. And then especially when we are doing something with such a huge amount of purpose that can genuinely change people's lives, this motor keeps going. Have you ever hit that ADHD burnout that so many of us, can relate to?
Well, not really, because I think when I got this kind of understanding, I probably would have otherwise, but I didn't, because now I feel, first of all, I have a purpose with everything I do, and it's a purpose, it's a calling that is so much bigger than just myself. And that I think it's enormously important for us as humans to have that kind of feeling that we're contributing to something much bigger than just ourselves. I think that's something that we often as Westerners also lack. And that is part of also our feeling of burnout and sense of what's the big deal with, even going out of bed. And I think that can be even stronger for us with ADHD, because we need this kind of this fire burning all the time. But then I think I'm fortunate because I'm also really, really good at I think taking time out of my schedule and focusing on the lifestyle factors that is important for me. So doing like setting my routines. And once I got my diagnosis, I understood how extremely important that is for everyone, but for ADHDers especially, to make sure that you have a proper diet, that you exercise on a regular basis, and like in moderation, because before my diagnosis, I tended to overdo things. So I guess hadn't I not had that kind of explanatory model at that time, I am sure I would have hit that wall in some capacity or other, either to train too much, or perhaps disordered eating, or perhaps the work-life balance thing, or struggling with 5 kids. But I felt like this is a responsibility that I have towards myself and towards my family, to make sure that I have my shit together when it comes to this, as I call the 7 ADHD deadly sins: the diet, the exercise, the sleep, the emotional regulation, the life structure, addictive behaviors, and like work-life balance and stress. These are like 7 factors that I regularly, every day I check, where am I? It doesn't have to be perfect every day. It's not like that, but I have to have some kind of sense of where I am on these factors. Then it seems like I'm doing well, and that I can avoid burnout feeling that all of us touch upon that.
Yeah. And that is, moving into the work that you're doing through Letter Life. And that is, from what I understand of it, it's a tool to help more women who've been diagnosed or have an understanding of their ADHD to be more intentional in their daily life. Can you explain a little bit about the purpose of Letter Life and what you hope to achieve with that?
Definitely. And Letter Life is actually, it's joining forces between the research that we do, all the research that we do in our research group is what you call patient public involvement research. So it all comes from all the research questions and all the development that we do, and the aims that we have is kind of it comes from women with ADHD, and it aims to tailor interventions for women with ADHD. So, and joining forces then with a group of really skilled like tech developers trying to harvest this kind of experience that we as female ADHD have, and try to get that into a tool that you can have in your pocket all the time. So, and I've worked as a psychiatrist for I'm so old now, 20 years maybe. I've met so many women, and many of them are also in my book, telling their stories about their ADHD experiences. I've met so many women, and just listening to what they are saying, finding kind of the common thread in their stories, and also and try to harvest that and put that into something, and then forcing my perfectly innocent companions on the tech developmental side to also do so many. I think they've done like 200 user interviews with females across the entire world, just trying to understand what they need. And what we came together with, the first kind of most important thing, is that women feel abandoned. You feel abandoned by people that don't recognize and validate your ADHD, and you feel abandoned by people trying to normalize what you're experiencing. It's like, yeah, everyone thinks that is, difficult or tough, or everyone, feels sad when they get rejected. But trying to normalize that, how well-meaning that may be, it makes you feel like, okay, so if I feel this strongly, if I can't make this work, then there's something really, really, seriously wrong with me. So and you feel abandoned by healthcare. You feel like you're left with, at best, if you can force yourself through the system, you can get a diagnosis, and then you get a prescription, and then you're kind of on your own. So this kind of abandonment theme has been very, very central at the core when we try to develop Letter Life. So basically, what we want to do is pull together all the good forces that is out there, all the good information, and also tailor like content to what is missing today. And then having the women fill out and track themselves on the 7 deathly sins, on your what we call the 4 central brain processes that may be working a little bit differently when you have ADHD. So we talk about the control tower of the airport, the frontal lobe, the executive functioning, the organizing, planning, structuring, all that. You can have strengths and weaknesses within that area. Also the volume button, the regulating of energy levels, of activity levels, of appetite, of sleep, of emotions, everything, that when you have ADHD, it's impossible to get this moderation going over time, right? And then we have the flawed virus filter, the virus filter for the brain's hard drive, where everything, all stimuli from your own body and from the world around you gets in there and just constantly requires process speed and attention, distracting you from other things. And then the gearbox, the shift of your brain, where you get like stuck in toxic thoughts and toxic loops of thinking and ruminating, and so it's so much harder to try something new when what you're doing is no longer working. So there are 4 areas where we can see very clearly that the patients that we have interviewed can show how their ADHD impairs them in life. Right. So we have those 4. We have these 7 lifestyle factors, and everything. All of these are influenced by hormonal fluctuation. So that is what we have also located is missing, because you get all this advice and you get the medical decision making from your healthcare professionals based on a male norm all the time. And then they wonder why the meds doesn't work for you, or why, the thing that went so smoothly 2 weeks ago now is like completely chaotic. And so all of these things, if you add the layer of the hormonal fluctuation on top of that, things become much more predictable, actually. And that is something that can be very calming for us ADHD, right? It's like knowing, being able to also like almost send messages to ourselves in the future. It's like, okay, so this is what usually happens during these kind of danger days, or these, PMS, PMDD days. I can expect that. Maybe I shouldn't plan things. So in Letter Life, we have this kind of, you have your own like medical journal, your own personalized journal of how you are doing on these 4 brain processes, on your 7 deadly ADHD sins or lifestyle factors, and on your hormonal cycle.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a research tool for you guys. This is like an interactive, it's feedback from, the audience, but also then helping the women as well gain better awareness of how they can move forwards in life. Because, as we know, ADHD is with us, for the rest of our life. And, we have these very vulnerable moments in our life as women and girls with the hormonal fluctuations where it's so much more prominent. And, those vulnerable moments are, puberty, pregnancy, post-childbirth, perimenopause, during menopause. And it can be so, and obviously every single month, we could be suffering with PMDD and PMS. And as it's exhausting, absolutely exhausting. And I hear so much from my clients, from myself. I've got 3 daughters, and I'm seeing it, very prominently in my eldest daughter right now. And it's so hard as a parent to see the hormonal fluctuations combined with the defiance of the ADHD slash teenagerhood. Sometimes it's hard to sort of see, is that a defiant teenager? Is that a defiant ADHD person? And trying to help with the lifestyle factors where teenagers typically don't want to be told what to do. Exactly. It's very hard. I'm just coming at it from all angles here, but
that's really interesting. Also, because I also have 3 teenage daughters, right? And you are. It was someone said you're in the export import business. You are constantly exchanging things. You want to teach them stuff. You want them to take care of themselves, and they reject. Of course, they should find their own way in this, but it's this kind of transaction going on all the time. And what I thought with Let the Life is, I remember so painfully how it was to be a teenager myself, having parents telling you what to do, also not being diagnosed, so no one really understood why everything turned into such a mess all the time. So, and then the pain of being reminded about stuff that that you should be able to manage yourself at this point, and then you couldn't. So then Let the Life is also a tool where you can remind yourself about that. So building autonomy for teenagers as well, because that is also how you develop self-awareness and self-efficacy, to realize things about yourself, about your brain, about your ADHD, and finding clever ways to navigate in life. And that's why we call it the ADHD 24/7 model, because it's like you have your ADHD with you all the time. You can treat it with medication, and you can treat it with evidence-based multimodal interventions, but it will always be there. It will always be like a companion in your life. So you might as well, find your own clever ways to navigate and share with others.
Yeah, exactly. What's interesting about the ADHD women I've been in touch with is that so many of them have been so resourceful, exhaustingly resourceful over their lives, of not understanding, not knowing themselves, as you say, being abandoned by healthcare, dismissed, invalidated. They've had all these dots that they've wanted to connect, and everything has just gone to a dead end. And they've had to come up with these clever hacks. Way before we were watching hacks on TikTok and YouTube, we had to instill these ways to find a way of living that doesn't feel as exhausting. And the research is only just beginning. So what you're hearing maybe as a clinician is so much anecdotal evidence. You could probably build a whole thesis if it wasn't necessary to have to back it up with medical research. And I wish that maybe there was a way of, being able to push forward. But unfortunately, it's all got to be backed up with hormonal, research and evidence, doesn't it? And so we're on the back foot, just trying to piece it all together. And, thank God for you and the researchers and the women and the doctors and all the people that you work with, because we've got something like Letter Life, we've got your book, because it comes with gravitas when it's coming from a psychiatrist, and it comes with the research that you've been doing. How can we as women, this generation, us right now, who are where we are, we can't push forward medical, research. What can we be doing right now to just be helping ourselves if we're just getting this realization of ADHD?
That's a really good question. And it's also so true what you're saying, is that because you hear these anecdotal testimonies all the time, right? As a clinician, I do it. Among my friends, I hear it all the time with other people that have ADHD. So you almost think that this is kind of based in science or research because, well, obviously, as ADHD women, we have more PMS, PMDD, or so, yes, that anecdotally we do probably, but is it really proven in science anywhere? It's like really small, preliminary results, nothing like at all in line with what you feel or think that we have. So we know about all these vulnerable periods of the female reproductive life, but then we don't know very much about the science behind ADHD in these different vulnerable times. So it's really important, I think. And I also wish that we could like fast forward and just get the research out there. But as I see it, the only way to do that and to get there is to do this public patient involvement research, just making sure that the women themselves are involved when we design the studies. Otherwise, I fear that we will just repeat what we have already done, just trying to like get women into the studies as an alibi. Okay, so we need 50% women here. We need 50% women because otherwise we won't, get our research grants or blah, blah, blah. But if we are truly committed to trying to understand the mechanisms behind female mental health, we need to acknowledge that when we include women in our studies, we also have to include the fact that we are biologically different from males. So, for example, I am not aware of particularly many studies that actually ask the women that they include in their studies where they are in their menstrual cycle, for example. And yet, we are supposed to then say something about depression, say something about anxiety, say something about blah, blah, blah. And yet we haven't really decided or established the hormonal status of this woman. So is she before or after puberty? Is she before or after menopause? Is she taking any hormonal contraceptives? Or is she, there are so many questions that has to be added. Yeah, we cannot just like, okay, so we are satisfied now because 48% of the sample in this study are females. That is bullshit. We need to acknowledge what it means to be a biological female. So that is first of all. And then what can we do? What can we do to get there? I think we can do this PPI research where the women influence the research questions and the design of the methodology. But then we also have to, we can't wait because research takes forever. Trust me. So even though we are trying to do everything we can all at the same time, it will take years before we have so solid evidence that we can actually rely on that for like treatment guidelines and stuff like that. So what can we do in the meantime? Because we cannot sit and wait for that. We cannot do that because you and I, we have daughters, we see life going on 24/7 for so many girls and women. And then I would hope that Letter Life would be kind of one piece of that puzzle, one part of the solution, because what we need to do until we have like data where we can generalize is that we have to make sure that we know how this is for me, how hormones affect me or my daughter or my patient. So we have to have some solid data on the individual to be able to make sound medical decisions. So for me as a psychiatrist, if someone comes into my office saying, I feel like this, or now I have to acknowledge that, okay, first of all, ADHD, you can feel a lot of things right here, right now. It doesn't necessarily implicate that this is what's going on in the rest of the 3 months until we meet next time. Still, I base a lot of my medical decisions on what that person says in that moment. And if you don't know anything about ADHD, the risk that your medical decision making becomes flawed is huge, right? because this is how I feel right now. So there's a huge responsibility for you as a patient to tell a story that can be comprehensive. And there's a huge responsibility for me as a clinician also to make sure I have all the facts. And with Letter Life, then you can track yourself and you can see how your symptoms, or your ADHD symptoms, how your ADHD profile, how your everyday function varies across the hormonal cycle or across different medication. When you titrate medication, you can see if you change the dose in certain periods of your menstrual cycle, for example. Does that influence how you feel and behave and how you work and how stressed you feel and how you sleep and how many times you actually go to the gym that month? So this is extremely important personalized information that I need as a medical doctor to make a sound decision or a shared decision making, preferably together with my patients, to make sure. And still, there's so few of us in the healthcare system today that actually ask women anything about their hormones, anything. And especially in psychiatry, it's the completely different universe. It's like there's the brain and then there's the body, and those two shall never meet. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do. We should be aware that we don't think that what we are doing is science, or that we should be aware that the recommendations that I give as a clinician is valid for you because I have data on you. This doesn't necessarily generalize to anyone else, and that's also a responsibility I think we have, all of us, to, when we communicate about these things, be very specific about, this is a theory that I have, or this works for me. It doesn't necessarily translate to anyone else. So that is also something that we are trying to do in Letter Life, trying to build this community where we can share these stories and experiences with each other and learn from that. So just pool the kind of knowledge and experience that we have, and collect that, and then see what can we harvest from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. And what I would love to see is this sort of multidisciplinary way of working where psychiatrists work with gynecologists, with hormone experts, with endocrinologists, who understand the hormonal fluctuations, who understand women's health specifically throughout all the different periods of our life. There's so much intertwined. And like you say, the professionals who have a broader understanding of the interconnectedness of it are very few and far between. I probably, on the podcast, spoken to only a couple who understand the impact of ADHD on hormones and women's health. I still want to speak to a gynecologist who will certifiably say to me, I have seen more neurodivergent women with PMDD and endometriosis and PCOS than maybe neurotypical women. So we can get that validation, because I've not had one person that has said to me that they've had a clean bill of health when it comes to women's health issues or hormonal fluctuations. Not one, not one of them said, oh yeah, all normal. Or they've had an issue with contraception.
You need to talk to my work wife, Helena Kopp-Kallner. She's, it's a really funny story. We started working together. We went to med school actually at the same time and knew each other, but she went out to gynecology and I went into general medicine and later on addiction medicine and psychiatry. And then we met for a lunch. I think it was like 6-7 years ago. I started talking about what we were doing, and she was a bit depressed at the moment because she thought that she'd worked for so long and she was doing a really good job. But then there was a group of women that she never, felt that she could help. And they didn't listen to what she said. They said that they didn't tolerate their contraceptives. They got pregnant when they were really young, and she got really, worried about them because she said, oh, they feel that there's something missing in their life, and now they're pregnant and they're like 17. And I try to not to be cynical, but I just fear like this is not going to heal this, like having a baby at this point. And she said, and they're like, it's like they don't want to do the things that is good for them. And even though I do all this thing and I go out on a limb to help them, it's like they don't want my help. And they're so as she said, I think there's something wrong with them. I think maybe they have like these personality disorders or something that you talk about. It's like, yeah, Helena, they might have personality disorder, but they might also have ADHD because they sound a lot like the women I meet in my clinic. And I've met so many women saying like, I can't tolerate hormones, I can't tolerate contraceptives, I have to manage contraceptive in some other way, and it turns out that's not a specifically good idea if you have ADHD. So it's like all of this I saw it from my perspective, she saw it from her perspective, and then we started talking. And then she said, and they say that they get depressed by hormonal contraceptive, and that's not true. Everyone knows that. There's a lot of research, and you don't get depressed from oral hormonal contraceptives. And it's like, yeah, but my patients say that all the time, Helena. So there must be something in that. I said, no, she said, there's nothing. They're wrong. They're wrong. And then we started talking. And now, like almost 10 years after this, we have posed all these research questions, and we have proved both her and me wrong in this. First of all, we just published a large study showing that yes, these women are right. They are 5 times more likely to get depressed once they are prescribed oral hormonal contraceptive. And we just said, that's not the case, but we didn't look specifically on this subgroup. So there's again so empowering for like this area of research that we can allow ourselves to be wrong, to listen to our patients, to listen to what they're saying, put their assumptions to the test and see that they were actually right and we were wrong, and we have to learn. And then now working together in this kind of cross-professional collaboration that we have with so I learned so much from Helena about hormones and about contraceptives, and I can actually, where I have some patients where my medication, ADHD medication just does not work. And I send them to Helena, and she kind of tailors something with the hormonal medication as well, and we get there. So a little bit from my perspective, a little bit from her perspective, and we get there. And none of us would have succeeded or would have been able to help this woman just from the psychiatric or just from the gynecology perspective.
This is music to my ears.
This is extremely rewarding also as a clinician to work in this capacity and to see that, you are allowed to listen to your patients. They are the experts here. And then we learn from that, and we bring what we have to the table. Helena about hormones and about reproductive health, and I can bring about the ADHD brain and about central stimulant medication and all that. So we bring what we have to the table, and then we see where we end up. That is precision medicine. Yeah. That is precision health, precision medicine. And this is exactly where we should be heading.
Yeah.
And I think like female well. ADHD female ADHD might be the perfect pilot case. Because there are so many individual factors that we have to factor in to our decision making to steer right.
Yeah. See, what fascinates me in this whole subject is that I've been scrabbling together as much evidence and information as possible from a personal perspective. Generationally, there's huge amounts of undiagnosed ADHD in my family through the generations, where I see the hormonal issues, the gynecological issues, the depression, the impulsive behavior, the addiction. It's all there in my past. And, from a spiritual, universal perspective, I feel like my purpose, what gets me up every morning, which helps me with my ADHD, is I want this to be better for the next generation. And that's what gets me up every single morning. And that's why I created the ADHD hormone series, which, I literally just thought we need more information and we're not getting it from, lots of professionals. So I just went out and spoke to as many different specialists as possible. We've got about 40 now in the series, and hopefully giving individual bits of information for people, whether it's menstrual cycle tracking, nutrition, lifestyle, hormone replacement. I've tried to just piece it together in different workshops, because this is a much bigger picture here. This is for women to go in and advocate for themselves when they go into their doctor, their GP, who may not be in any way interested or specialized in this area. And they can say, I have listened to this, and they've written notes, and they can say, I need this help, or I need you to understand that I can't take this type of contraceptive. I was dismissed with my coil. I was told the Mirena coil would be absolutely fine and I wouldn't have any issues. I begged them 3 months later to remove it because I was in the worst depressive cycle I've ever been in. I was just shocked. And when I asked them to remove it, I was belittled and almost kind of ridiculed, saying, I've never had this before. Why are you feeling like this? No one ever reacts like this. And I said, I need you to take this out because it's not good for me. It's not good for my family. So I just want to be able to empower more women so they can advocate them for themselves. And
we have the exact same, I think we have the exact same mission, and there's so reassuring to hear that there are there are more of us out there to have this focus, because there's also unfortunately a lot of shit, or a lot of very questionable things out there, because when the science base is so limited, it opens up for a lot of people that doesn't really know what they're talking about, and that actually may have questionable motives so we are kind of vulnerable, right, to that when the science base is so weak. So I think it's really important to try to collect the good information, the personal stories, the theoretical rationale behind what we are feeling, and I think also the more of us that can tell these stories that you tell about the coil, because that is something that I hear all the time as well, right? And it would be so easy for me to just dismiss that and say, well, you cannot feel that. It's like microscopic levels of this or that hormones. But I have actually, the time have made me humble to the amount of women that actually testify that this is the case, and that they are truly affected by that. And what we see in our research, and what is kind of our working hypothesis at the moment, is that it is not the hormone or the hormone level per se, but the fluctuation. It is during the periods where hormone levels are fluctuating, increasing, or changing, that we are the most vulnerable. And that it seems to be the case when it comes to hormonal treatment as well, to try to find the optimal dose and the optimal hormone label for you, but also to keep it then as stable as possible, to be very, very cautious to take, for example, your oral hormone contraceptives approximately at the same time every day, just to optimize the stability of your hormones.
Yeah. And I think that's when being ADHD informed, understanding the mood regulation, the emotional, all of that, and the impulsivity, where our energy levels are, so many of us are very good in the morning, like sort of late morning till early, afternoon, and then it tails off. All these different little nuances are so powerful.
That's also why you need to know your ADHD brain and your ADHD profile, right? Because if you have a profile of, as a psychiatrist, you often see that if you have a lot of anxiety as comorbidity or as part of your ADHD profile, that can be somehow protective against the worst impulsivity thing, right? Because you are anxious that things are going to be happening to you, or you're thinking a lot of catastrophic thoughts in advance, and then you tend to it's very painful, and you may struggle and suffer a lot, but it kind of protects you against the things that can be very impulsive. So if you have that kind of ADHD, then actually the period around ovulation where estrogen levels are peaking can be the worst for you, because then you or it can be, sorry, it can be better for you, because then you have the kind of lift of the mood and the thing by the estrogen, and then you suffer really 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 during the PMS. But if you don't have this anxiety trait, then you might be susceptible for impulsivity, and then you might be susceptible just around ovulation, because then the estrogen level kind of can reinforce the impulsivity that can be perceived as kind of done in a positive, like in a positive manner. So it is like, oh yeah, I feel like, going out, seeing people. I feel like doing this. I feel like buying this. I feel like driving really fast in my car. It's like, yay. So that part of ADHD can be really, really, increased and be very dangerous for you, right? So if that kind of positive, um, positively driven impulsivity increases around ovulation because estrogen levels are high, and then you also add on to that by your ADHD medication that might also work more effectively during that time, and further trigger actually the impulsivity if the levels get too high, then that can be the worst part of your month. So you have to kind of break it down to, okay, there are the hormonal fluctuations, so there are different part of the hormonal cycle, but then there is the individual ADHD profile. So it's not like all women with ADHD have the worst consequences of their ADHD and their hormonal suffering during PMS, PMDS. For some people, it is the increased impulsivity around ovulation that actually makes so much like ripple have so many ripple effects that you have to kind of sort out the mess that you create during 1 or 2 days when you are extremely impulsive.
Yeah.
And that takes the rest of the month to kind of mend and sort that out.
Yeah, I mean, that's so beautifully described. And like you say, you can relate to it in so many different ways. And but I know also from a psychiatric perspective, if you do really struggle with the PMDD alongside the ADHD medication, it's possible to take, I'm just asking, antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication just for that last 2 months to sort of bolster ourselves. Is that something that you help women with as well?
Yeah. So that kind of strategy we've used for a long time for PMS, PMDD, PMDS, to just use like cyclic SSRI treatment 10 days before you have your period, to just even out or to reduce the anxiety and depressive symptoms during PMS. So that is something that you can use. But I think it's really important to try to disentangle if what you are experiencing is a distinct comorbidity. So is this PMS, PMDS? Is this distinct anxiety? Is it a anxiety disorder? Is it a depressive disorder? Because then you probably also need some kind of treatment for that distinct comorbid condition. It is not certain that the ADHD medication then will help.
Just moving forwards now, Lotta, how can can people access your work? And obviously you've written this amazing book, you've got Letter Life. Is that your help for the masses, or are you open to having new patients, or is that kind of not quite where you want to be now?
Yeah, not at the moment. I think I have to just again be very self-aware of my and myself and my, yeah, exactly, and also my I have my default mode would be like yes, because it's so much fun, and I really really miss seeing patients at the moment, but I don't do that this year because I would like to give everything and my best to to try to develop Letter Life and see if it's possible to build something that can be the thing that I would have liked to have, like my doctor, nurse, coach, friend in my pocket. So my ADHD buddy, my ADHD coach, my ADHD library. And to try to build that together with my patients. But then hopefully I will be open to see patients again. Once Letter Life, can take on a life of its own.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to thank you on behalf of all the ADHD women and girls and the community, because we need the clinicians like you. We need the medical professionals to be there who understand and validate and are moving that needle and ensuring that this next generation get more help and more support. And I just want to be able to visualize a future where we have this multidisciplinary team of people who are ADHD informed, understanding, compassionate, and we can be patient-led and interact with each other and hopefully not have to hit walls each time and start from scratch every time we see, a gynecologist or a physio or a nutritionist, where we have to it's exhausting. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the future, there'll be a lot more support out there. But I know this conversation will help a lot of people. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing as well. So that is extremely empowering for me as a person and also as a clinician. So it helps a lot for me as a clinician to listen into your podcast and to listen to all the stories and all the real life experience. That's extremely important.
Well, thank you so much. And I'll put all the information, Letter Life, the book, everything that you're doing, I'll put it all in the show notes so people have got it.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did and it resonated with you, I would absolutely love it if you could share on your platforms or maybe leave a review and a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please do check out my website, adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk, for lots of free resources and paid for workshops. I'm uploading new things all the time and I would absolutely love to see you there. Take care and see you for the next episode.